It was supposed to be the most powerful warship on Earth, the pride of an empire, a floating fortress bristling with bronze cannons. On its very first voyage, in front of a cheering crowd, it sailed less than 1 mile, tipped over and sank. The whole thing took about 20 minutes. This is Graveyard Footnotes, history's strangest true stories, dug up. And today's grave sat at the bottom of a harbor for 333 years. This is the story of the Vasa, the greatest warship that never fired a shot in anger, sunk by ambition, paperwork, and one very stubborn king. In the 1620s, Sweden was a rising superpower, aggressive, ambitious, and locked in a long war with Poland over control of the Baltic Sea. And running the whole show was King Gustavus Adolphus, a brilliant, restless warrior king who wanted his navy to be feared across all of Northern Europe. So the king ordered the construction of a new flagship. Not just any warship, the biggest, most heavily armed, most magnificent vessel Sweden had ever built. A statement to the world that the Swedish Empire had arrived. They named her the Vasa. And on paper, she was a monster. Over 200 feet long, 2 full gun decks, one stacked on top of the other, carrying 64 heavy bronze cannons. That kind of firepower on a single ship was almost unheard of. The Vasa was designed to win battles before they even started. She was also a floating work of art. The Vasa was covered, bow to stern, in hundreds of intricately carved and gilded wooden sculptures. Lions, gods, emperors, mermaids, a riot of golden propaganda meant to terrify enemies and glorify the king. No expense was spared. None. But here is where it all started to go wrong. The king, away fighting his war, kept sending orders demanding changes. Make her longer, add more guns, add a second gun deck. Each royal demand made the ship taller, heavier, and more top-heavy, and nobody on the project had the authority or the courage to say no to the king. To make things worse, the master shipwright in charge, the one man who truly understood the design, fell ill and died partway through construction. His assistant was left to finish a ship built to the king's ever-changing wishes, with no real way to fix the fundamental problem growing inside her hull. And that problem was simple and deadly. The Vasa was too tall and too heavy up high, with 2 decks of heavy cannons sitting far above the waterline. Her narrow hull and shallow bottom did not carry nearly enough weight down low to balance all of that. In one word, she was top-heavy. The obvious fix was to add more ballast, heavy stone, down in the bottom of the ship to weigh her down and keep her steady. But there was no room for enough of it. And piling in more would have pushed her lower gun ports dangerously close to the surface of the water. They were trapped by their own design. And astonishingly, they knew. Before she ever set sail, the Navy ran a stability test. 30 sailors were ordered to run back and forth across the upper deck, side to side, to see how she handled. After just a few passes, the Vasa was rocking so violently that the officer in charge stopped the test, terrified she would roll over right there at the dock. Let that sink in. The men responsible for this ship watched it nearly capsize while tied to the pier, in calm water, with no wind and no cannons firing. They had clear physical proof that the Vasa was a death trap. And then they decided to send her out to sea anyway. Why? Because nobody dared stop it. The king was impatient and far away, firing off angry letters demanding his flagship join the war immediately. Delaying meant explaining to a famously short-tempered monarch why his masterpiece was a failure. Easier, everyone seemed to decide, to just let her sail and hope for the best. So on the 10th of August, 1628, the Vasa was prepared for her grand maiden voyage. And it was a spectacle. Crowds packed the shores of Stockholm. Foreign diplomats watched from the docks. Sailors brought their wives and children aboard to celebrate the launch of the mightiest ship in the north. To impress the watching crowd, the crew opened the lower gun ports and ran out the cannons, ready to fire a thundering salute as she departed. Beautiful, imposing, and given everything we now know about a top-heavy ship, absolutely catastrophic. The Vasa set sail, gliding out into the harbor to the cheers of the crowd. She had traveled roughly 1,300 meters. Not 1,300 miles, 1,300 meters. Less than a single mile from where she started. Then a gust of wind came down off the hills and caught her enormous sails. The Vasa leaned. On a stable ship, this is nothing. On the Vasa, she heeled hard over to one side. She began to right herself, and then a second gust hit and pushed her over even further. And there it was. The fatal flaw made real. As she tipped, water came rushing in through those open lower gun ports, the ones sitting far too close to the waterline. Once the sea started pouring in, there was no coming back. The water flooded the lower deck, dragging her down. The mightiest warship in the Baltic rolled onto her side and sank, masts and all, right there in the harbor, in front of the entire horrified city. Her maiden voyage had lasted about 20 minutes. People rushed out in small boats to pull survivors from the water, but for around 30 men, women and children trapped below decks, there was no escape. They went down with the ship. The pride of Sweden became a tomb before it ever left home. The humiliation was total. The most expensive, most powerful ship in the kingdom had just been destroyed by a light breeze on a calm summer day, in its own front yard, watched by ambassadors from rival nations. So naturally, somebody had to be blamed. An official inquiry was launched. The captain blamed the builders blamed the design. The designers pointed out, very carefully, that the ship had been built exactly to the dimensions the king himself had ordered. Everyone in that room knew the truth. The Vasa was top-heavy because the king made it so. But you cannot exactly put a warrior king on trial for his own vanity. So the inquiry concluded with the most convenient verdict imaginable. It was nobody's fault, an act of God. No one was ever punished for the sinking of the Vasa. And then, slowly, the world simply forgot about her. The Vasa settled into the cold mud at the bottom of Stockholm Harbour, and there she stayed. For 333 years, a national embarrassment, drowned and out of sight, fading from memory into a half-forgotten legend about a ship that sank in front of everyone. But the Baltic Sea had been quietly keeping a secret. Its water is cold and unusually low in salt, too low for the shipworms that normally devour sunken wood within years. And so, down in the dark, the Vasa did not rot away. She waited, almost perfectly preserved. Then, in 1961, after years of careful work, they raised her. And what came up out of the water stunned the world. A genuine 17th century warship, her hull almost completely intact. After more than 3 centuries on the seabed, it was like pulling a ghost up into the daylight. Inside, they found a frozen moment in time. Thousands of objects, tools, coins, clothing, sails, even the skeletons of those who had drowned that day. The Vasa had become the most complete, most detailed snapshot of an early 17th century ship anywhere on Earth. Today she has her own museum, visited by millions. And that is the strange final twist. The Vasa was a total disaster, a monument to royal ego and the cowardice of men too afraid to speak up. She failed at the one thing she was built to do, and it is precisely because she failed so quickly and so completely that she survived to become priceless. History buried her as a joke. We just dug her up as a treasure. This has been Graveyard Footnotes. Subscribe and we will see you at the next grave.